If we take a look at example 1, we're going to use the diagram below to answer the following. So we're going to take what we did in that chart above and then apply it to an actual diagram. So first, A, it wants us to name the plane 2 different ways. So we're going to look back at our box. And to name a plane, we either can use 3 points or that fancy capital letter that's written in the plane. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. So we take a look at our diagram. Let's use the 3-point method first. So I'm going to write the word plane. And I'm just going to pick 3 points, and it's really important. The 3 points cannot all be on the same line. 2 of them can be on the same line, but the 3rd point has to be on a different line. So let's pick P. I'm going to pick P. I will pick N. And then I'm going to pick a point that's on a different line. I'm going to pick Q. So I'm going to name that plane P, N, and Q. Again, order doesn't matter. You could have said NQP or QPN. You could have picked 3 totally different points. You could have said, you could have picked R, Q, and P. You could have called it plane RQP. You could have picked points, you could have said P, T, and R. You could have named that plane PTR. They're 3 points. They're inside the plane, but they're not all on the same line. Okay. Another way to name the plane is to use that fancy capital letter that does not have a dot next to it. It's not a point, there's no dot, and use that. So we can also name it plain old S. Okay. Again, with geometry, one thing I really like is there's multiple ways to answer problems. There are probably 5 more ways we could have named this plane. As long as it fits that criteria, it is correct. Okay. B says name a plane that contains point R 2 different ways. Or sorry, name a line that contains point R in 2 different ways. So I'm going to find point R. Here's point R. And I'm going to highlight the line that point R sits on. So it's sitting on this line right here. Okay. If we go back to the chart, to name a line, we can use 2 points or a lowercase letter that is written next to. So 2 points or the lowercase letter that's written next to the line. Well, you can pick any 2 points that are on that line. I'm going to pick R. And then another point that's sitting on that orange line, I'm going to say Q. You could have said TQ. That's totally fine. Just because they want the line to contain point R doesn't necessarily mean R has to be in the name. You name the line TQ, R is on that line, so that's okay. If you forget the symbol, because remember when you name a line you have to use a line with arrows on the end and then you write the points underneath it. If you forget what symbol you're supposed to use, just write the word. Just say line R Q, and that's totally acceptable. So if you don't remember what the symbol looks like, or if you're unsure what the symbol is supposed to be, just write the word. That's totally fine. Another way to write this line is, again, use this little fancy lowercase letter that's written next to the line. There's a fancy H there. We can use that to name the line as well. We can say line H. So any one of those 2 are acceptable ways to name that line. Again, there's more than one way. You could have said line TR, or you could have said line RT, or line QT. Again, multiple ways. You just can't say like TH, because again, H is not a point on that line, so you can't use it. For C, this is a segment that contains point T. Well, here's point T. And remember, a segment starts and stops. So there's no arrows. So when we make our symbol, I'm just going to make a line with no arrows. I'm going to start at T, and then I'm just going to go to N. So one segment is TN. Oops, sorry about that. Another segment you could say segment PN. From segment P to segment N. Again, T's not in the answer, but T is in that segment. So that's totally fine. Segment PN. Again, multiple answers. You could have said segment RQ. That's a segment that contains point T. You could have said TQ or RT. All of those are acceptable answers. And again, if you can't remember what symbol you're supposed to use for segment, just write out the word. You're naming a segment, just write out segment, and then use the letters TN or PN or RT. D says, are the points P, T, and N collinear? Again, the vocab word we just talked about, collinear, means points on the same line. So let's see. Are P, T, and N on the same line? They are. They're contained all in the same line. Therefore, yes. They are collinear. E says, are points P, N, and M coplanar? Meaning, are all 3 points in the same plane? Well, if we look, here's P. P is within that plane. It's in the it's within that box. It's in the shaded area. N is in the plane. Again, it's in the shaded area. It's within that box. But M is floating up here. M is not in that box. M is not in the shaded area. It's just kind of floating on that line above the plane. So it's like if you put your hand above the table, that's kind of how point M is acting. You just hold your hand above a table. It's not in the table. It's not on the table. It's hanging up above the table. Okay? Therefore, it's not within that plane. So these are not coplanar. So there you go. There's example 1.